You're now live streaming.
Where?
Yep.
Oh. Good evening. Welcome to the Business and Economic Development Committee. It's Monday, February 5. We are looking at 5:57 as a start time. Around the table, we have Director Cree, we have Councillor Fournier, we have, whoop, she's leaving, never mind. I'm sorry, we have an empty seat. We have Council Chair
Thank you.
Pelletier, we have Councillor Trimble, we have Councillor Leonard, Councillor Schaefer, Councillor Fish. We have a big table here.
Yeah.
Councillor Yakubaga. We have in the background, City Manager Lori is here. And I don't know if you have people with you, but we can hit them as we need to.
Bring them on up.
Voting members, if we need to vote, it doesn't look like, no, we're gonna wait on that because I think we're good for a while on the voting piece. So we have some really exciting things on here.
Yes, we do.
First one,
Yeah, first thing on the agenda is the Grandview lot housing proposal discussion. I have here with me, John Egan is here from Genesis, and we're gonna hear from him in just a couple of minutes. I just wanna quickly kind of go over for people watching and for the council about this project. As you know, your top priority this year is housing, and staff has been, looking at different avenues of how can we encourage, or in some cases, maybe be part of the solution of providing for housing in Bangor. And we've been looking at the old nursery lot, which is about 11 acre lot on Grandview. It's well located right near the high school, it's right near a shopping center, a Starbucks, proposed Starbucks coming in. It's a really great location to have housing. And what we're hearing from a lot of folks is what's called the missing middle, which is people at 80 to 120% of median income being priced out of both rental and ownership properties. So we are looking at that as the top priority for this lot of trying to reach that population. So what we're trying to do is we want to have a plan that has multiple types of housing. So there would be multiple partners involved. So some rental housing, apartments, possibly, condominium, and also some small lot. If we change, we're gonna change the zoning, request to change the zoning with you to multifamily and service district, which would have a smaller lot, so we could create sort of a mini subdivision on the property. There are significant wetlands on the property that's kind of controlling how much development can go on there, but we're looking at, depending on how much apartments, how high the buildings can go, we're looking at anywhere between 50 to 100 dwelling units on the property. So as you know, one of the great things about using city property for developments is it really reduces some of those development costs for people, especially with the missing middle type of housing, because there aren't as many programs for a developer to get subsidies from for that missing middle housing. So if we can be, again, part of that solution to try to come up with a way to, reduce those development costs, and property acquisition is a huge one in pre-permitting costs. So we're looking at that as our priority property right now. Some of the partners that we have been talking to, Penquist is right next door. They've always had an interest in this property. Habitat for Humanity has also expressed an interest in doing some single family home type development. And we've also heard from Echo Housing, which is a company on Mount Desert Island that is also looking for partnerships with the city to put in some of their smaller and energy efficient homes in Bangor. So there is a lot of interest in it, and we're really excited about working on this. So the next step is going through the process for doing a zoning change, and then thereafter we'll be looking to do a request for qualifications for a developer. And the beauty of doing that is that it allows you as a city to really have control over what kind of development that you really want to see ultimately on this property. I'm gonna move, John Egan is here I'm gonna move him over to be,
He is a panelist.
oh, he already is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the names. I wasn't looking at you. Hey, John.
Hi, Ann.
So, John, I don't know if you want to discuss your involvement with us on this project. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. My name is John Egan. I'm with the Genesis Community Loan Fund. We are situated in Brunswick, but we work statewide on housing issues. Genesis is primarily a lender. We provide loan financing to affordable housing and community facilities throughout the state. And I'm on the technical assistance side, and that's the other thing that Genesis does is provide technical assistance to small groups, nonprofits, for-profits, developers, building owners, landowners, municipalities, organizations that are just getting started, anybody that's focused on creating housing solutions for their community. We can work with them. We can work with somebody who is just starting and just trying to figure out how to form their organization and how to go about finding a project, all the way at the other end of the spectrum, working with developers who are in the middle of a construction project, but have never worked with Maine Housing before and want to understand how that financing works. So we can talk with folks and work with them anywhere along that continuum. Our contract to provide all of this work is provided by Maine Housing, which is our state housing finance authority. And so that means all of our services and all of the time that we provide for this is free to the user. So there's no charge for these technical assistance services. We were invited in by Ann and your manager to just have a look at the Grandview project. And I got to say, I'm wowed by what you've got going on there. It is a fantastic opportunity. I happen to sit on the town council where I live down in southern Maine, and I wish we could have something as robust and articulated from city government, town government, as you all have there on Grandview. So I applaud the efforts that have gone in so far, and explained all of the details that you're looking at. I can just reaffirm that most of the work that Genesis does is focused on developing housing at certain income strata. And unfortunately, that it gets down in the weeds about the definitions of those income criteria, but that's how the public financing works. So all of the funding from the state or from the feds and from Maine Housing comes with income ceiling criteria. Various programs have different income levels that are allowable, but almost all of them are targeted at households of family income of 80% of the area median or lower. There are a couple of home ownership programs that allow the home buyer to be up to 120% of the median income. And I should have had this while I was waiting. I should have looked up your median income so I could have that number right off the top of my head. But it's your median income in Bangor is around $79,000 to $84,000, I think, somewhere in there for a family of four. Now, is that too high?
No.
Family of four.
Family of
four.
Yeah, family of
Yeah.
four.
Family of four, yes.
Yes,
What's the number, Ann?
that's for a family of four. You had that right. Or
68,900 at 80%.
16.
68,900.
68,900.
Is the 80? That's the 80% number. Yeah. So I work with these all over the state, so I always have to have the chart in front of me, and I should have had it in front of me before I said something.
It's okay.
I apologize for that. But anyway, my point is that Maine Housing has lots of resources for all kinds of different types of rental, mostly rental production. They had, and I put that in past tense, a home ownership program for developers in 2023, but it is exhausted right now, and there's some potential that the state legislature might refund some of that, but there's nothing available right now to support developers putting up affordable home ownership. There are lots of programs on the buyer side for getting you better interest rates for a buyer and helping with down payment and closing cost assistance, but those things don't do enough to bring down the actual cost of what it takes to produce a home ownership unit. And with construction costs today, it is extremely difficult to build new construction or do any sort of substantial renovation and have the sale price of those homes be anywhere near the 100 or 100, even 120% of the median income. Construction costs are so high, land costs are high, developer costs are high, that the only place that that is working is at the top end of the market. So our work with community groups and municipalities is to try and navigate a pathway to get to a successful project. But before we do that, we often work on making sure that the group that we're engaged with understands what problem they're trying to solve. So we encourage folks to go through an inventory of what they have, the target and the demographics in their community of the population that they're trying to serve, and really understand where the demand is in their community so that they can make their best effort with a project that fits the community. We can often help with the steps involved with selecting a site, how to go about attracting a developer to come in and do the work, or possibly even incubate up from the ground a developer within your organization to try and do something like that. Real estate development can often sort of be glossed over as being relatively straightforward. You just go hire a contractor and get the land and build it, but it's quite involved, and the financing is pretty complex these days, and it's extremely expensive, as we've already talked about. So we can help solve some of those challenges in terms of at least understanding where the risks are, where the holes in the continuum are. And as I said, if we're working with a group that wants to pursue Maine Housing, we can help you access the finance programs available at Maine Housing. I think the great opportunity that you have with the Grandview site is that because you already own the land and because you have an opportunity to at least help facilitate infrastructure, you're providing that necessary capital buy down. You're taking that dollar amount out of the developer's budget, and therefore they're going to be able to get those units into the target of the income bands that you're looking for. Because you're gonna take, first of all, you're gonna take the speculative risk out because you're controlling the transfer of the property. And if I understand Ann and Debbie properly, that you're gonna try and get the infrastructure to the site and possibly in through the site as well. Those are two huge issues to take off the table for a developer. And with that, you'll be able to get developers to come to your process, and you'll be able to tell them exactly how and what you want and the price ranges that you'll be looking for. And you'll have a dialogue about how soon or how quickly they'll be able to do that, but you have an enormous advantage by controlling the site and the utilities that are going into it. Not to mention the fact that you're maximizing density, which always makes for a more efficient development project. So I'm applauding the work that you've already done and what you're set out in front of you here for tasks to get this approved locally. From my perspective, it's not an overstatement at all for me to say that you're leading the state in terms of what a municipality can do to solve its housing problems. You're out in front of this, and you're bringing real solutions to the effort. And so I'm applauding the effort, and I continue to stand by and help whatever I can. It's really exciting to see what you all are doing there.
Councilor Fournier, you had your hand up.
Yeah, no, I'm not on the committee, but I think this is an absolutely great partnership with Genesis. I would be in full support of the rezoning process and looking for the build out scenarios. I know John brings a wealth of experience to the table, and I'm glad he's on board. I think that's just a good fit all the way around, so.
Council Pelletier?
Thank you. Just to second that, I'm in full support of this project. I think it brings together a lot of different assets and opportunities at the right place, with the right expertise to really make a dent in what we need to be able to support people who want to live here and grow their families here. So really, really excited to see this coming together.
Anyone else? Council Fish?
Do you see any, present or future, if we did move forward with a Maine State Housing support or involvement, would there be any requirements or other than the income? Would there be any, restrictions, requirements, or things we should be aware of for the future for this project that would be, limiting in some way, opposed to, private investors getting involved?
Right, that's a good question. I don't think I know enough about the exact details of the proposed units. Maine Housing is also really pushing the latest technology in energy efficiency. So the quality of the units of anything that Maine Housing finances is pretty high in terms of the energy envelope, meaning the exterior of the building and how it's heated and cooled. Maine Housing is also not allowing any fossil fuels to heat and cool their units. So if a property is financed by Maine Housing, it has to have an electric source of heating and cooling. Most of that is carried by a heat pump. Depending on your climate, it might require some backup on top of that. So there's a couple of those kinds of parameters. Maine Housing's big component with their financing is that you do have to follow, we just had this conversation earlier with another community, you have to follow federal fair housing law. So if you put a project together and you have Maine Housing involved, you can't say, for instance, it's only for school district employees, or this is housing just for the public works snowplow drivers. In other words, it has to be available to everybody in the public. You can advertise and make, make targeted promotions towards the groups of the community that you're looking to serve. But aside from an age restriction of senior or family housing and housing that is specifically designated for people with disabilities, Maine Housing won't let you restrict the use of the units to any particular segment of the population.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Anybody else?
I'm just in full support, that's all.
Full support?
Yeah.
Same here. Yeah. I would say that we should do this and do it as soon as we can.
Okay, great, thank you. Thanks, John.
So, Anne, you wanted, for us to provide staff direction. How much direction do you want?
Well, yeah, the first step is to change the zoning, because right now it's zoned as parks. So, we'll start the process for a zoning change to multifamily and service district, which is the district that's right next door for Pinecrest. So it's, it's just carrying that through as that transitional piece into, the neighborhood beyond, so. And then from there, we'll, continue to work on different types of, what we're trying to do right now at a staff level is work on different configuration of, units to try to get, sort of it'd be good to have an assortment of options so that when we do issue a request for qualifications, that people that are responding have an idea of what our priorities are for what we want to see out there. So I'll probably come back to you at some point soon with some different ideas to get your feedback.
Okay, so we need a motion to
I don't think we
have
need a
director.
motion.
Yeah,
Just they're looking for guidance.
yeah.
Well, then, is everybody in agreement on the zoning and the configuration of the units
I'll give it a thumbs up.
to start? Yeah. You have it.
All right, thanks. Next on the agenda is the rental registry update. Robin Stinicky, our community development officer, is here to give an update on her work on that.
Hello, everyone. This is a really great night to put this on the agenda, and I appreciate that it's number 2 on the agenda because, well, we've heard tonight, we heard a little bit from folks about housing, but we also heard a little bit at our last committee meeting, just looking at all of the different impacts throughout our community about what housing and other social issues look like depending on where you sit. Since I wrote the memo that accompanies our discussion today, I had a really great HUD training that touched a little bit on some context that I think you should hear, especially given the really great segue that John gave us. So because we're an entitlement community and we receive HUD funding, we're actually required by law to certify that we affirmatively further fair housing laws. And over the last couple decades, HUD has made certain rulemaking regarding how we would go about doing that. And they just released a rule that I got lots of training on this past week, that we have to make a plan that specifies that we take meaningful actions beyond just preventing discrimination, that there is fair housing choice and access in all of the different ways that we experience housing in the city. And so if you're looking at my memo, you see that I'm talking a little bit about how this is a great action to talk about housing because we don't really know what we have, what we need. And Anne is saying, here's a really great parcel of land. We can do some types of rental housing, some types of home ownership housing. And it's an exercise in trying to figure out, well, what do we have? Who do we have it for? And, you know, how can we use that to make a difference? I think that what's really important is if we're being required to create a plan for fair housing and we're already doing it. I mean, we heard John up there saying like, we're like coming out ahead in terms of all the other entitlement communities. And I sort of like puffed up my chest a little bit when I heard that, because I also did the same thing when I'm in Washington and thinking, oh my gosh, it's everything that we're doing over here in the city of Bangor Community Development. We're doing all of these things and we didn't even realize that it was required. We're just doing it because we care about our community. So looking at the analysis of what our fair housing is also looking at our rental housing. So we do know that just about half of our housing is rental housing, but we just don't know what the state of that is. So conversations that we've had about a rental registry that creates an inventory is one really great way to say, how are we taking steps to evaluate what our housing stock really looks like, both ownership and our rental housing, and how can we increase our engagement with landlords who are a pivotal piece of that. So we're going to begin a pretty substantial planning process for community development broadly, and then CDBG more specifically, that engages many of our stakeholders, and landlords and property managers are a really big piece of that. So talking with them about what their housing needs are as they're managing some of the biggest component of our housing, and how we can roll out a program that assists with our quality of rental housing. And what are the components of a program like that? What kind of relationship can we have that would be really constructive? Some of the things that we've talked about in these meetings have been to increase the safety and security of housing by offering financial mechanisms to be able to make improvements. So we're going to do that. We're going to have 2 meetings to really get a sense of what's really important, what direction they'd like to see us go in, and then we're gonna continue to shop these types of housing concepts around rental housing to other groups. So yeah, I think it's a really great synergy of, you know, our obligations under HUD and what I'm, you know, the box checking, I guess you could say, but it's what our heart is and what we already planned to do because we felt like that was just the right thing to do. So, do you have any questions, any comments about how you think we could do it? Maybe better, or just some things to think about?
Questions? I don't see any.
No questions.
No.
All right, perfect. Well, thank
That's
you. very
amazing
much.
from this group.
Awesome.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
We'll keep you up to date on that.
Yes.
I think we spent a lot of time, you know, in the past committee meetings discussing this and the best way to go about with this, so.
Mhm. We're getting there.
It's
Yeah,
good to
another
see
step, another
action.
step. It's just really great to see that, you know, everyone else is looking at us and saying, yay, Bangor. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, Anya Collette, our planning officer, is gonna give an update on her work with the downtown alignment project. This was a project that was started, I think, in 2016, 19, 16. Yeah, it was definitely pre-COVID, and then we shelved it during the shutdown because it just required a lot of stakeholder work and we weren't meeting with people. So Anya has taken it, dusted it off and is working on it. So go ahead.
Yeah, so, basically what this project would do would be to look at our 5 different districts that we have, and look at places where we can align them, where are places that we can expand them. And just try to kind of clean it up a little bit and make things less confusing for people in downtown. And one of the main things that this came out of was the Bangor Center Revitalization Area, which is also called the Facade District. And the Facade District partly overlaps with the Historic District, but also kind of goes outside of it to cover part of the waterfront area. And it's kind of a confusing process for people because someone may be not in a historic district, but might be in the Facade District, and they still have to go to the Historic Preservation Commission, or somebody might be in both, and there's 2 different sets of standards that they have. And so it can just cause confusion for people, and the standards are, you know, maybe something that aren't completely up to date with what we would want to do now. And so one of the main things that we're proposing to do with this would be to remove the revitalization area and instead put design standards on parcels outside of the historic district, but kind of streamline it. And they wouldn't need to go to Historic Preservation Commission. It would just be part of the land development approval process. So it would hopefully reduce some of that red tape, but also allow us to kind of maintain that downtown feel, that pedestrian oriented feel of the areas around downtown. One of the other main changes is over time, people that are just on the fringes of downtown have expressed that they want to be part of the special assessment area. And so we worked with Downtown Bangor Partnership to talk about those parcels. And so there would be quite a few expansions of that special assessment area. And part of it would largely match our current TIF district for downtown. There's not really much of a change to the parking management district. We're just proposing to clarify the boundaries of what actually is in the parking management district. And then we do propose rezoning a few parcels to downtown development or the Parks and Open Space District to reflect what's currently there. And then also for several properties that we would rezone to downtown development, it would give them more flexibility for the future. And it would also match their current use as well. Downtown development's a pretty flexible zone. It allows a lot of different things. And so it would just help clarify for these property owners and give them a few extra abilities for land use. And then also kind of going along with this is we do have a historical survey in progress for 2 of our primary downtown historical districts. And so as part of that process, we've asked them to look at buildings that are, you know, not in the historic districts, but are maybe like right next to buildings that are, and evaluate them for potential inclusion in the historic districts. And so the next step in all of this would be to reach out to impacted property owners, get their feedback, and just make sure that we're really clear on what would be happening, what the impacts would be. And so we would be, if you all are good with these changes, we would be looking at doing a meeting with them probably 3rd or 4th week of February. So.
Questions, Brian?
I do have a question for the businesses that would be adjusted into the special assessment district. That fee, is that required, or can they opt into that?
That, I believe that is a required fee, yeah, but they get additional benefits for that fee they're paying, so.
Okay.
Council Fish?
The homes that are adjacent and maybe not in the historic district, but adjacent or have historic features about them that you're considering putting in, same question, sort of say, when you have a historic building, there's a lot more limitations. So would this be mandatory or for the seller, the homeowner to opt in?
I think the typical process is for somebody to opt in. It's very rare that a historic district is imposed on somebody.
We work with you.
Yeah, it would definitely be a partnership, so.
Any others? See you. Okay, thank you.
And then next on the agenda is Anya's been working on another type of housing to try to, again, removing barriers by providing different types of housing styles, to our ordinance so that, to encourage more housing units.
Yeah, so one of the strategies in the comprehensive plan is to encourage more innovative types of housing, including single room occupancy types. We already have one type of single room occupancy, which is boarding house, that's allowed in several zones. So this type of use, the co-living dormitory, would be kind of a larger boarding house. It would be 8 or more rooms. And as part of that, we would be revising the definition of boarding house to be 7 or fewer, just to help differentiate those uses. The other primary difference would be that this use would be open to, it would have a portion of the building could be a shorter term stay. It could be a few days to a few weeks. And that would be primarily geared towards people that are maybe like moving, they're in between places to live, or we've heard about traveling medical staff that might only be in town for a few days. So it can kind of give that more flexible housing arrangement, but at least 75% of the building would have to be longer term housing, just to ensure the purpose of this is providing an affordable housing type for people. One of the primary features of this is having shared facilities, shared kitchens, shared common rooms, things like that. And that's really, A, it promotes the affordability. You don't have a kitchen in each room necessarily, but B, also promotes this, this sense of, camaraderie, I guess you could say, with other residents in the building. Yeah, less isolation and things like that. And this is becoming quite a popular type of housing in other cities across the country. I listed a few examples in your memo. There's a couple places in California, Chicago, places in Florida. So it is an up and coming use. And so basically the draft language that's in your packets would add this as a conditional use to some of our high density residential zones, as well as downtown development, as well as it would make it a permitted by right use in the SNPS and GCNS zones, which are our primary commercial zones. It would require a business license for the long-term rentals, and then a short-term rental license for the short-term rooms. We do have a requirement in here that the facility would need to be close to public transit within a half a mile, and then it would be required to have on-site management at all times. I think that's pretty much everything, so no questions.
Questions, Council Travel?
Yeah, for the conditional uses, how did you select as like, the high density residential seems to make sense, and I'm not so sure about neighborhood service district, but how does it meet the conditions to be granted there, to meet what conditions do they use there to get into one of those conditional use zones?
Well, I actually listed the same conditions, whether it's permitted or conditional, it would have a set of requirements that I would need to meet. The reason we chose it to be a conditional use in those zones was to be consistent with boarding houses, because boarding houses is also a conditional use in those zones. And we chose the commercial zones as it being permitted by right, just because we just felt like, you know, it could fit in well with some of the more commercial areas like Target or wherever. Maybe it could be a place where some of the workforce from those places could easily walk to. We just felt like it might fit in there better as a permitted use, so. Yeah.
Anybody else? Questions, comments?
I think it's good to see this happen. I mean, we talked about this before and I like to see, on-site manager. I mean, that was always a requirement for, like, you know, for those to pass. So I think it looks good. More housing.
A lot of things starting to come together.
Yeah. What we've been talking about for a couple of years. Yes,
Mhm.
awesome. It takes a
Very
lot of
nice.
time, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
We have an executive session.
Executive one, just one.
Do we have a motion to go into?
I will go into executive session under MRSA 456C, disposition of real property or economic development. One second. Yeah, roll call.
We do have to have a roll call. That's for the committee, right?
Right.
Okay. Counselor Tremble,
Yes.
Counselor Leonard.
Yes.
Oops, I don't read my own name. Counselor Schaefer.
Yeah.
Are you on?
Yes.
Should I call you
Yes.
Carolyn? So much. Okay, Counselor Fierce.
Yes.
And I will be a yes. We are in executive.